souls, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm really excited because I'm finally doing the My Classics tag by Dani Mystic. She is probably my all-time favorite tarot tuber that there is, and she came out with this tag that I thought was really fun, and it's My Classics. So it's basically your classic decks. So classic Cheyenne decks that are my constant go-tos, decks that are associated with me, just staples in my collection that will never go anywhere, and they'll always be a favorite. They'll always just be a constant. And I apologize if you can hear my pellet stove over here. Yesterday was Ostara, it's supposed to be spring, and it's snowing outside today. So I apologize for that. You'll see an overarching theme in my classics, I think. All right, so the first one we're gonna talk about is my Rider-Waite Smith deck. This is everything, I know. Like, I'm boring, okay, but this is everything to me. This is the Borderless Smith-Waite deck. And I know some people have an issue with the way that the Borderless was done, like with the Magician, I think, and I think the Queen of Pentacles, with the roses just kind of like floating in the air. But it doesn't bother me. This is my absolute favorite version of the Rider-Waite. It's what I'm bonded to. It's what I pull out time and time again. And this is not what I learned on. I guess keep in mind, I've only been, I would say, consistently reading cards for the last like year and a half, and then reading tarot really in depth within the past like year. So these have been that constant through that time. But yeah, I haven't been reading tarot very long. And so I don't know, and I know like everybody's like, okay, I've been reading with that for like 20 years. I get it, but I'm just like so excited about it. Like all of the symbolism, the Nine of Swords I showed first. I like just recently learned that all of the astrological symbols are on the blanket, and it blew my mind, guys. So I'm just like, I don't know, it just seems like a gift that never stops giving. It's so good. And if somebody took all my decks, I wouldn't be happy about it. But if they took all my decks and said you could only have this one, I could live, okay? So this is just, it's a classic. It's literally a classic, and then it's also a classic for me. It's so good. You can do anything with this deck. You can do any kind of reading with this deck. It's clear, it's to the point, and it gets the job done. All right, I guess we'll just keep going with tarot. My next tarot classic is the Druid Craft Tarot. I have heavily modified this several times because I didn't know what I was doing. I originally just trimmed off, there's like white borders on this deck, and then I did such a bad job trimming that I ended up trimming all of the borders off. And I have rebacked it in just like this plain brown color, and I think it goes with the deck, but it has made it really thick. But this deck is just so good. I love that Druid Celtic feel to the deck. It's gorgeous. The guidebook on this is really, really good. The imagery is amazing. It's very Rider-Waite, so if you're a beginner, you can read this quite easily. It's so good. The colors, I love like the purples and the greens. I pull this out a lot when I'm trying to do like inner work kind of readings. I feel like it works very well for like life path, or like trying to figure out where you belong and things like that. That's what I love this deck for, and it works beautifully when I'm reading for myself, and it works beautifully for clients as well. Okay, next up we have the Golden Art Nouveau Tarot. Again, I'm very boring. I like my Rider-Waite kind of decks, and this one is so good. I've pulled this one out thousands of times, it feels like, to do readings. I find it reads so clear for others, and that's what I mainly use this deck for, is for reading for clients, because it reads so well. It's like a Rider-Waite clone through and through. If you don't connect with a deck like this, I would suggest something like this, a little bit more. It has that Art Nouveau style, so it's just a little bit easier on the eyes maybe, and it has that golden flair, which is always fun. But yeah, this deck has become a classic in my collection. It always gives perfect readings. It's so good. Okay, let's talk the last tarot deck I have, and then we're gonna get into Oracle Classics. So if you guys have been on my channel at all, you know the Green Witch Tarot. I've read this book front to back. I love it. This deck is what really made me fall in love with tarot. I started out as an Oracle card reader. That's all I really delved into. And I got a Rider-Waite deck that I just didn't connect to. The imagery was just so bad. The coloring, like, I hated it. And it wasn't until later that I fell in love with this. But the Green Witch Tarot, it like opened up my world on what tarot can be. That it can be different and people can have their own spins on it. And I love how witchy this is. I love witchy decks, you guys will see. So it's just so good. It has like pagan imagery, it has plants and animals. Each card has a plant and an animal that they go into in the guidebook. It's just so good. I'm absolutely in love with this deck. I could never get rid of it. It's beautiful. I just love the imagery. I love the Green Witch vibe. This deck, especially if you read the guidebook, has a little bit of a softer kind of feel to it. But I've used this deck in very like hard-hitting readings and it still delivers. So I've just learned to kind of put my own interpretation and spins on certain cards, because the guidebook can kind of like make things a little fluffier, I guess. So yes, this is a staple, a classic, a favorite forever and ever. All right, let's get into the Oracle decks. Moonology. Okay, I know I'm so basic here, but this was my first ever Oracle deck and I just love it so much. On my spiritual path, I found that my connection with the moon has been very important and very pivotal in my spiritual journey. And it's really simple, this deck. It's moon cards, and it has like the moons in all the different signs, the full and the new moon. And I use this deck at least twice a month. I use it for every full and new moon. And it always delivers. The messages are scarily accurate, and they're not all like happy-go-lucky kind of messages. There are some that are maybe not so easy to hear, which is good. I like a balanced deck. You know, like it has work through your fears. Don't let pride get in your way, right? So it doesn't have just like really happy messages, which I enjoy. I like a balanced deck. You know, I don't want the deck to necessarily slap me in the face all the time, which we all need that sometimes, but it's just, I just love this deck. It's very, it feels like the energy of the moon to me. So that's why I think I love it so much. And it's, I think my only, it's my only moon deck. It's the only deck I use kind of in conjunction with the moon, and I think kind of dedicating it to that certain part of my practice has really just like amplified it, made it more potent in the readings that I get. But this will always be a classic. It's just so good. You don't have to use it with the moon. You can just use this as a regular daily message or an added message to a tarot reading. I could talk about this deck all day, but it's so good. And I know like so many people have this, but it will always be a classic for me. It has a special place in my heart, of course, the sentimental reasons of it being my first Oracle deck. So yes. Okay, the next three, you'll definitely see a theme here. So let's talk this one first. I keep it in this little bag. This is the Witch's Oracle by Sally Morningstar. These are the backs, just a plain pentacle. I have trimmed the borders off this deck. It was just like a white border. And this deck is so beautiful and witchy and just magic. And I really like the keywords. We have sword, aspiration. We have bat, rebirth in consciousness. The familiar ally. Six-rayed star, unification. Broomstick, cleansing. Raven, keeper of secrets. So it's just so good. And one of the main reasons I adore this deck so much is because of the guidebook. I got this early on in my kind of like witchy journey, and the guidebook just kind of like opened doors for me that were previously closed. Like it just opened my eyes to a lot of things. Her guidebook in the beginning kind of has like a history of like pagan holidays, and just growing up the way I did, and then just kind of finding out some things just from that book, which opened up a whole nother rabbit hole, right? I love, since I trimmed it, I mean, it was always kind of a smaller deck, but since I trimmed it, it's like pretty small. And I love this. When I want that witchy, earthy, pagan kind of element in a reading, I just pull one of these cards and it kind of ties it all in with that. And I love it. It's portable, so you can kind of like throw it in a bag with another deck to go with it, and I feel like it goes with any deck that I put it with. It's really good with the Green Witch. It goes really good together with that, or just like anything. It's so good. This is a classic, and it always will be, and I feel like not a lot of people talk about this one, but it's an all-time favorite. Okay, last two. We have the Halloween Oracle. And the reason that this is a classic for me is because I've used it so much. And also Halloween is like my favorite holiday, right? And I'm glad I feel like with like the tarot community and like with witchcraft and things like that, I've found some like-minded people that love Halloween as much as I do. I feel like I was always alone in that growing up. And so I finally found like my people. The backs are very like kitschy kid kind of Halloween vibes, and I have trimmed this one as well. But the front, like these are so good. This is such a well-rounded deck. And it's so magical and witchy and spooky and like ghostly, which is like everything I love in life. Everything I deeply love in life. So, oh my gosh, this is so good. And this is not just for Halloween. Like, I wish this was named something else, like the Graveyard Oracle or like the Spooky Oracle or like something, because I feel like that kind of restrains it for a lot of people to only Halloween. And while I do like to kind of keep this deck, I like to use it mainly during Halloween, but this is a deck you can use at all times. Winter, the sacredness of pausing. That's a message you can hear all the time. We have Skull of Stars, infinite possibilities. Like, this deck is so good, not just around Halloween. Like, I find myself using it all throughout that dark half of the year. Black Cat, fortune meets opportunity, graveyard, unnecessary fear. Like, this is just my aesthetic, my vibe in a deck all the way. The Lamp, Remembrance. Like, that is so good. So if you wanted to, you could pull out like the really Halloween-y cards, like I think like Trick or Treat, the Werewolf. I mean, I personally don't pull anything out when I use it because all the messages could pertain to any point in the year. But you could do that, and then it could be just a more universal deck for you. Apple, Risk and Reward, like they're just, it's so good. And I think this is honestly the deck that I've used for other people the absolute most, because for some reason around Halloween people want more readings, and this past Halloween I booked so many readings and I used this deck for all of them. And so I feel like this is one of the decks that I've read with the most. That's also why it's a classic. But yeah, and I'm going to talk about in an upcoming video about why I'm probably going to be using this in the summer as well, because of just like this energy I've been feeling. So we'll talk about that in another video, but this is a classic forever and ever. And I feel like if you guys have been on my channel, you know what this last deck is going to be. This is the Seasons of the Witch, Samhain Oracle. Now, I have the Yule Oracle. I like it. I'm going to be getting the Beltane Oracle, and I'm sure I'll like that one. But this one is like my ultimate witchy deck. And they're all supposed to be like the Sabbats, Seasons of the Witch, the Wheel of the Year, all of that. But this one to me feels the most witchy, and I feel like that's because it is like for Samhain. This is the back, beautiful red gilding. I pulled this card the other day when I was contemplating something regarding divination, and of course that came out. But this deck is so beautiful. It's dark, it's witchy, it's magical. Can you tell what I like in a deck? I'm sorry. I'm like, every time I look at this deck, it's like this overwhelming energy. It's so beautiful. And I love the darkness. I love all the witchery going on. Like, come on. It's so beautiful. Giada Rose is the artist, and I am obsessed with her. I love the little incantations at the bottom on every card. I love the keywords. This deck is perfection to me. Like, I love all these decks around me so much I could get rid of my large collection and just have these. But, you know, I don't want to do that. But I would be happy with that. You know, these are like the decks I reach for. Like, you know, I'll buy new decks. I have kind of a large collection, I would say, and I'll reach for other decks in other situations, but these are the ones I go to over and over and over, and I know they're gonna work for me. Like, I just know. It's like coming home. Yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love to see your tarot classics. If you want to do this, let me know if you're doing it after watching this. I love Dani's channel, so thank you, Dani, for making this tag. It was really fun to do, and I would love to revisit this next year and see if I've like added any more to my classics, or taken any away. I don't see that happening, but you never know. If you guys have any like suggestions for witchy decks that I didn't mention, I would love to hear. I'm always looking for like new, really like witchy kind of decks, so I would love to hear your suggestions down below. But yeah, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.